Hello everyone, welcome to our today's conversation and thanks for joining us. Today we're joined by Gabe Dominocielo, who is the co-founder of Umbra Space. And Umbra is a technology company focused on advanced space missions. So to this day, Umbra has 6 spacecraft on orbit and it is set to launch many more after winning several contracts lately, which again, congrats on that, Gabe, to you. More about Gabe as well himself. So he is well known in the industry for contrarian thinking, which is quite unique. And he has an unhealthy obsession with customers and unit economics. So hi again, Gabe, and it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Wonderful. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit more for the audience. So basically, I took quite a good look at the Umbra Space, and I saw you have quite a well-versed and a technical team, right? So as a co-founder, Gabe, would you mind to explain us again how you colleagues came together and what prompted you to create Umbra Space?
Sure. Well, it was once 2 guys in a garage. Started the company with my very good friend David Langen, who's the CEO, and he's probably the best CEO I've ever seen. And he invented a very, very interesting technology after spending 10 years working on advanced space systems. And I head up the business side, where you can have cool technology, but it kind of at the end of the day, it has to make money, and it has to make a lot to return a venture investment. So that's how we started.
Sounds good. Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, we see that all across the board, the problems, especially in the space industry, in some technology sectors as well, like in deep tech, but mainly in the space industry as well. A lot of companies, their founders are mainly technical individuals, so they don't have that much of understanding of the business side of things, and exactly what you're saying. So I wanted to underline that many companies they develop good products, but just having a good product is not enough unless you're able to commercialize it and really package it and deliver it to the customers. Then there's not much, and you're not making much change and difference, right?
Well, I think the main observation that I could take from being in the industry for 8 years, almost 8 years, is you had very smart people who were heavily influenced by their investors, who felt that scaling with capital was the only way to scale. And so if you have an option to, let's say, raise unlimited money and launch 10 satellites, opposed to launching a new technology that is scary and that potentially wouldn't work, whatever, and only launch 1 satellite that takes 10 times the amount of photos, you're going to always go with the less risky option when money is free. And now that interest rates have risen so rapidly, I think that we're going to see a lot more rational.
Yeah,
well, maybe less rational, but because that behavior is rational. So maybe what you would see is you'll see technology progress.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you brought up, obviously. So do you believe, again, this being the individuals being smart and being perhaps too smart and too logical, right? So do you believe that's a part of what the university and education, again, being from a technical backgrounds for a majority of the founders, so is that what puts them into more, again, conservative approach mode, or what do you believe is the reason for that?
Well, so my co-founder is extremely smart, and I may take credit for the business side, but it was all in his mind. He is a fabulous business mind, probably much better than mine. I think that it's the influence that investors have, and it is the easiest way to solve a problem. There's also a ton of risk in inventing something new. So if you go and say, I want to, I don't know, launch a radar satellite, what you're probably going to do is look at old expired patent, or you're going to look at another vendor, somebody who has that technology already, and then build a system based on that. But what we did was we went to first principles, where it's like, why are things the way they are? and could they be different? And the answer is, well, yeah, I suppose you could fold antenna. I suppose you could do X, Y, and Z, but it's scary, and there's no book for it. It's like, well, maybe you just don't need a book. Maybe you have to invent something, and that's very difficult and very time consuming. And if you're venture funded, time is a killer to internal rate of return for the investors. So I think that one of our biggest advantages was that we bootstrapped the company for years, made mistakes, and then we were able to build something very, very unique because we didn't have anyone telling us what to do. We really built a system that for our customers.
Yeah, that's really important.
Probably naive.
And I already see why they call you a contrarian thinker, So you guys took it back to the principles, to the basics. So you looked at, okay, what's needed and why has this conventional approach has been there and how can we make it better, right? So that's awesome. And again, I agree to the point also that you bring in regarding the investors having too much, perhaps even influence in some of the companies, and they're becoming like a revenue oriented versus the customer oriented, right? So that's
so if you are extremely customer focused, you will make a lot of money.
Yep, that's also true.
So it's not bifurcated. There's like, if all the customers are like, oh, Umbra is the best place to go, best resolution, lowest prices, great customer experience. I'm not getting nickel and dimed on anything. So kind of but your technology needs to enable that. So we may be, there's an article about us recently about transparent pricing. There's very few companies with transparent pricing.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the points that I wanted to bring up as well. So
yeah, well, I mean, I'll let you ask the question, but like the idea is behind transparent pricing is it is enabled by our technology. And I think that it is again rational to not have transparent pricing if you have kind of a limited ability to collect data.
Yeah, that was very interesting. I mean, when again I checked and I saw you had the prices listed out there, it was transparent. So that's also kind of one of the contrarian things, as I understood, because space industry mainly, like if you take a look, everybody is all, let's talk behind the scenes, and there's this meetings, and like behind the curtains everything is happening, right? Which again, it probably shouldn't be like that, right? Because that's again my personal view, right? So we should make everything transparent if we're able to, right? And we're going to get into that a bit more regarding how your technology enables that to be transparent. But I have another point as to what you mentioned, again, being customer oriented, again, will result in a lot of cash. And I agree with that. We've seen some great examples from some of the bigger companies from other industries as well. So my question to you is, Gabe, as someone who has this unhealthy obsession with customers, as you like to put it, right? What is the most valuable lesson that you have learned about customer engagement in the space industry and retention as well? And how has it influenced Umbra Space approach to customer relationship?
Well, so, I mean, I don't know that there's a valuable lesson. I mean, we conducted tons of interviews in the early days, right? Because I'm not an engineer. I don't know how to build a satellite. So when David was building and designing the spacecraft, I was spending time learning, and the same problems came up. And these are not like new problems. Everyone said the costs were too high. Everyone said they wanted permissive licensing. Everyone said they wanted transparent pricing. So it was not rocket science. Just speak to somebody and see what the flaws were. And again, I understand why the other companies don't do this. But for us, we don't see a future unless our customers are wildly successful for the entire industry. So we just have to make sure that our customers are taken care of. They're able to make a lot of money, and our technology enables that.
So what would be the main reason why other companies don't do this, Gabe? So if you were to unpack a bit more regarding that.
Well, I mean, the main reason is that the reason why we do it.
Okay.
The main reason why we do it is our spacecraft, because of what we designed, what we invented. So we invented a radar that has 1200 megahertz bandwidth, which allows us to see very, very far away. Allows us to see very far away at very high resolution. We're also extremely nimble. So when we fly over a high demand area, let's say Texas, we're able to collect more sites than others. So on a unit basis, so our unit cost is fairly low, but we're able to produce 10 to 15 times the amount of revenue, which means that if you have an excess of supply and it's meeting demand, if you lower your prices, then you increase demand, and then you find supply-demand equilibrium. So, I mean, our prices are approximately 1/10 the list price of some of the legacy companies. And I do expect that to go down. Yeah, as we launch more spacecraft, we will have more supply and continue to give great products to our customers.
So speaking about more launches again, and recently the Earth observation market is becoming very, very crowded. And I would love to see again your perspective on that, Gabe. So
it become a lot less crowded.
It has become less crowded.
I think it will become less crowded over the next year, but I don't think it's crowded at all. Like, I don't think that there's one company that, if you think of the 5 to 10 high demand areas, there's not one company that isn't sold out. Everyone's sold out. So it's not a crowded market. It's a limited supply of data with many providers. What we need is better technology.
I see. That's an interesting point, because basically what insight that I had is that, you know, there's all these players. I had several conversations, including with individuals from, let's say, a company that's, I'm sure you know them well, Planet, right?
Sure.
And basically, they said that even if majority of the companies were like smaller startups and, you know, like middle level sized companies were to drop out, some of the biggest players that are dominating again the niche, they still would be able to supply the data to meet the demand in all the areas, basically. So
there's way, so the market, so none of us sell satellite pictures. We sell its information, right? We sell information for a point in time. If the price is right, the demand for that information is unlimited. And as you lower prices, the barrier to entry, you know, gets lower and lower. So if you are charging $5,000 for a satellite picture, you're probably only really selling to governments, sometimes oil guys, you know. But if that's $500, now you've opened it to a brand new, like, hundreds of different types of customers, especially for radar data, which is, you know, used in surveying. But if you lower that down to $50 or $5, then you're talking about insane app where a college student can go and get data. And you see Skyfight, if you're familiar with them, they're a reseller. You see them talk about what happens when you democratize data. And it can only be democratized if transparent, so you know what you're buying. Could you imagine not knowing the price of something when you buy it? Like, it just makes no sense to me. So you have to know what the price of something is, and then you have to be able to use it. Can you imagine buying a Nike and every time you use it, you had to pay a royalty, and if you showed it to your friend, you would have to pay another uplift, and all these like very complex things. So the providers need to just start letting go of a lot of these things that inhibit commerce. So the free market will solve all these problems. And I think that there are some providers that are really aggressive in making the data more open and more available, more accessible.
That's interesting. That's interesting trend again that you're bringing out. But so you mentioned it's going to get less crowded, Gabe. So is there any specific reason that makes you say that?
I mean, yeah. I mean, you would say that I mean, I don't want to be negative, but like higher interest rates are dramatically impacting companies that do not make money and that cannot. So there are some companies that their asset depreciation is greater than the amount of revenue that they can generate. And in a free market where you don't have like just unlimited free money from VCs, I think that might cause some pain.
Yeah, especially again, we saw the investments last year, they just halved pretty much. as compared to the previous one. And now we're seeing a lot of round extensions and down rounds that are going around. So yeah, so the recession really again hit space companies hard, especially. So do you agree with the notion, Gabe? Again, you mentioned bootstrapping in the beginning, right? So do you agree with the general notion that the space industry is like capital intensive for the startups?
I mean, I would not recommend bootstrapping a space company. It's
Okay.
very expensive. But I think that it is becoming less capital intensive. I mean, we saw it today with Starship.
Yep.
I mean, I don't want to quote him wrong, but Elon, I think, said publicly that it's gonna be like $100 a kilogram.
Yeah, I mean that's if you compare that to Apollo era when there was like 10K per kilogram, and yeah, that's a huge decrease, right?
I mean, yeah, you're talking about right now, I think for 150 kilogram launch volume on SpaceX's website, I think they listed it like 1.1 million. For a satellite our size, 75 kilograms, you're talking about $7,500.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a fairly dramatic drop. But again, that's going to lower the barrier to entry and it's going to make space much more accessible, which is positive.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that'll be factored in the unit economics, right? So if you previously were spending $1 million on launch and then it's 10 grand or something, that's positive. But you can't just kind of make a little bit of money, especially if you're venture funded. I mean, a Taco Bell in Tucson throws off like 30% profit.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to make a lot of money if you have a venture funded company. Like it can't be a little bit, which means your technology has to be significantly better. Can't be incremental. It has to be much, much better.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do agree with that, obviously. And what is there to disagree with, right? So yeah, that's.
Well, I mean, we've seen a lot of companies out there that did not pivot or are continually making decisions which do not support rational unit economics. Mm-hmm. And in a constrained capital environment, it's going to be very, very difficult to survive in a free market.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that earlier, Gabe, that your data, again, it's transparent. Basically, your pricing is transparent. Sorry about that. And again, the data so that you provide it doesn't have any royalties on top of it. So it's a flat fee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And basically, yeah. So same with other data, right? So my question is, how does, so are they able to share the data? Obviously with their colleagues or partners, right?
I don't, you can, if we have a massive open data set. We have 10 points on Earth that we image pretty frequently. It might be daily, it might be multiple times daily. I don't know. But it's hundreds of images. Mm-hmm. You could go onto our Twitter, take a picture off our Twitter, put it onto a coffee cup and sell it, and I would not get a penny. I would be happy that you did it. I'd buy it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, and then obviously, Gabe, so what are some of the measures that Umbra Space is using when concerning the data privacy and security? So how does Umbra Space make sure that again their data that they're providing and imagery is not again violating any of those?
That's a very good question. I was asked that recently. So we have a user license agreement. So we will the data is Creative Commons, but we still own it. Mm-hmm. So we allow you to share it and all that, but there is restrictions on whom you can share it to. Mm-hmm. We do not want our data shared with people who are hostile to the United States. Okay. I mean, at the end of the day, we're American. David and I started the company because we love America. We love this country. And we would not want it to be used negatively. Mm-hmm. So there are limits. It could but our data could be used, be put into an archive, all these things which are good. But yeah, it's got to be red, white, and blue.
Yes.
Not just black and white.
And you also mentioned that it's again very tough for space companies to bootstrap, which makes sense, okay, because you're dealing with a lot of hardware, right, as opposed to, let's say, some of the other type of businesses that there are. And my question is, as a co-founder of Umbra Space, right? So what were some of the biggest challenges that you have faced along the way when you were again, you mentioned you made a lot of mistakes. Maybe you care to, again, mention some of those mistakes and, recommend for other companies that are not specifically in the, your same market, but just in the space industry.
So, I mean, there's nothing about this that is easy. I'm glad that I think that if there was like a fork in the road, we always picked the more difficult fork, which was scary and hard. Maybe now that we're through and we're, selling data and stuff, it is, to make the right decision is not always the easiest thing to do. But I think for entrepreneurs, if you're going to bootstrap a space company, there are things that you can build and design that are inexpensive. So like our radar, which was 1200 megahertz bandwidth, which is this one is, we were able to do it for a very small amount of money, like thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands, like thousands of dollars, which you could put on credit cards feasibly if you're like a young entrepreneur. And, we plugged it in and it worked. And we knew that we had something very special. We had something that wasn't available commercially. And then with the antenna, we were able to design it and file a patent. We were trying to save money. David wrote most of the patent himself, and then we handed it to the lawyers, and the lawyers finished it. Again, you do not need venture money to do those things. So we accomplished a lot of goals early on to reduce risk. And when we first started, we talked to a VC, and he said, just go as long as you possibly can. Just go as long as you possibly can.
So that in regards of bootstrapping, go as long as you can.
Just go as far as you can. And the best companies don't ever need to raise venture.
Yeah.
They only go and raise venture to scale. And, I think as the economy changes, investors don't want to bridge to revenue. They don't want to bridge to profitability. I know this from my own, personal portfolio. I don't I'm like, God, you got a product in market and no one's buying it. Like that's a you problem.
That's a big red flag, right?
Yeah. And I think that like you see this in B2B SaaS, you have companies that are instantly successful, instantly have network effects, and instantly can grow. But with hardware, being able to show that you can build some of the components with limited risk, it helps the investors a lot make a decision.
Okay, so let's go back again. So you, again, your colleagues, you got together, your CEO, he was the one who came up mainly with the technology idea. You were handling more of the business side. And then, so how you bootstrapped for years, you mentioned, so for 2 or 3 years, right? Yeah. So how did the process look like? So you, at the same time, if you were bootstrapping, I imagine you probably had like, daytime jobs, both of you, right? No? So how did that look like?
I had financial independence, so I didn't really work.
Okay.
And then the company had a really small contract with the prime to develop technology. So we were able to kind of scrap and work on the technology without spending insane sums of capital. And even now, we don't spend a lot of money. We're very, very cautious about how we spend money because of those early days. Like I look at every dollar we spend, it's dilution. It's every time we raise money, it like the pie gets bigger, right? But everyone's ownership of it goes down.
Yep.
So we've been very, very cautious. I don't know what we've announced funding wise, but I mean, we've raised a lot of money, but we have managed to keep it out of the press, which is good. But it's hard.
Okay, makes sense. And then when was the point that you, again, reassured yourself when you got registered this first customer interest, towards your product? So how far along the journey that happened?
Like when did we raise our first outside dollar?
No, I'm not talking about raising. I'm talking about the customer interest towards your, again, services that you provide.
Immediately.
Very early.
Yeah, because we like our expertise is working with the government. So we knew immediately. They're like, if you have a commercial system that costs this much money, that can use 1200 megahertz of bandwidth and data that looks like this, you'll be fine forever. It will never be in public school. Like it is, you'll be fine. So we knew that there was also on the other side with commercial customers, right? You can go to a commercial customer, you're paying $7,500 for a 1 meter image. We will charge you $500 or whatever, $750 for a 50 centimeter image. So 1/10 the cost for 100% better quality. That's not a very difficult sales pitch.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the product quality and again, the pricing as well. So everything is basically advantage towards your side. So it definitely makes sense,
but those were all super early requirements.
Yep.
Because I understood that that we didn't want to do it unless we could make a lot of money. It wasn't okay to be incremental or be profitable. You have to have a totally outsized return, which means we have to generate a lot of revenue.
Makes sense. And when we're talking about, again, working with the government, right? So, I know that Umbra lately, acquired a lot of, fundings and, not the fundings, but, for the contracts from, NRO and the Air Force and Space Force and DARPA as well. So what are some of the, biggest things to pay attention to when, again, you're dealing and doing business with the government from your expertise and, from your experience, Gabe?
So I love working with the government. Everyone, all these people, all these startup founders are on the internet saying the government's slow. They're saying all these weird things about the government. It's not true. It's not our experience at all. The government is fast. The government is smart. The government is diligent.
That's a contrarian thinking kicking in again.
But is it? Because it's our experience with new technology, right? Okay, I'll put it this way.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. Don't get me wrong.
Well, I mean, I think essentially no one probably agrees with me, but they haven't heard me talk this. I very rarely speak publicly. Okay. So I'll put it this way. If you are in a dorm room and you come up with an idea for space, let's say, or for anything, the probability that the government, which has a nearly $1 trillion budget and has had hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars invested in technology for decades, hasn't come up with something better and probably cheaper, you're out of your mind. So what I see is a bunch of people who come up with an idea that the government probably had in the 70s and is already commoditized internally. And then they complain that no one's buying their product when it's probably much worse than what the government has. So, I mean, what I always say
about the product, right? Basically, that's the main key point here.
You cannot be the same or a little bit better.
Yeah. So increments are not the way to go. You have to take completely new approach. Right?
So no one cares about your cost except for your shareholders, right? So your costs have to be really low so that you can raise venture money, and then your end product has to be very good. If you're going to sell to the government, you're competing against $1 trillion in investment. It has to be really, really good. And I'm not even saying that we have the best product. What I'm saying is that our product is the best product commercially. And I don't know what the government has, but I know what we are going to. And the new system is insane. It's like science fiction. It's so cool. You just cannot be a little bit better. You cannot go into an existing market. So the radar industry is a big market. It has existed in Europe for a very long time, commercially with huge, I mean, I don't know how public, I mean, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in capital spent on satellite pictures. You cannot go into a market and then offer them a product that is the same or like slightly better or slightly cheaper, no one will buy it. You're gonna go with the brand name. You're gonna go with Airbus. There's no reason not to.
Yep.
Why risk it? So yeah, it has to have a totally outsized return.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Basically, yeah. You cannot sail into a red ocean and just, clash with everybody on the product, quality or the pricing, right? Because that doesn't make sense, because always those Goliaths, as you mentioned, in Airbus and, other big companies, they will again take the whole deals from you, right? So you have to really innovate, and you have to make competition obsolete, right? So that's the key point that you're saying.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but the other thing is the government is very smart. They're very smart, and they move very, very fast. So if you have something that fits a need, they'll work with you. I really could not say anything bad about working with the government. I really, really enjoy it. They're our best partner by far.
So how complicated is the process when it comes to, again, applying for those, if it's grants or for those contracts? So how complicated of a process that is?
You have to write a paper. I don't know. I don't do it, but
okay.
We have people that do it. It's a big company. I'm sure it is very difficult, but the risk reward of like spending the time
those are big contracts.
Yeah. And I don't know what's public about our DARPA contract. I didn't even know that was public, but you know about it. So
yes,
I mean, it's not like you're not talking about small sums of money.
Yeah. Well, I do tend to really dive deep into some companies. I might have found some backend information. I don't know, but I found.
I'm sure that there's some government website that has a disclosure.
Good. Yes, right. So my next question to you is, Gabe, obviously, as we now see the AI really booming again with the interest from public and just generally, how AI has advanced in the last. AI has been there, from 70s pretty much, on a good operating level, but now it has really spiked the interest because of, ChatGPT and some of the other projects that, is more of a public use, right? That's not like behind the scenes. So how does Umbra Space, again, combine artificial intelligence when it comes, again, to your data, providing the data, and what do you see some of the applications of AI for, Earth observation market could be in a big scale?
So we have a very strict rule of not competing with our customers. So when we take the picture, we give it to the customer and we don't analyze it. So we don't know necessarily what's happening in it. I think there's a few other companies that do it. We say it pretty explicitly on our website. We don't want to compete with our customers at all. So if our customers come to us, they know, so let's say I have this really cool AI change detection product or something. They know they can buy the data from us, and we're not going to try and steal their customers. We're going to try and give them as much data as possible that they can label really well and get more money. Because if your objective is to make sure that your customers make a lot of money, they'll always come back and buy more data. That's one part of your question. The second part of your question is how we would use it. I think that it's very attractive to do onboard processing. So where you could scan a large area, let's say at lower resolution, and you would have an algorithm which would detect certain objects. And on board, you would throw away everything that isn't, a car. And then you would go back and re-image those locations in super high resolution and just downlink those objects. Because I think, though we sell satellite imagery, it is not what our customer wants. Our customer wants to know.
Customer doesn't even know what that is, right?
They don't care. They so the customer wants to know how many cars are in that parking lot, or is the dam flooded or whatever. I don't know.
Yep.
So if you're able to get the customer closer to their answer through your product, that's probably what you should do. And you just have to balance the line. Not. So we would use AI on the spacecraft, not on the ground. Because it's for us, it's unit economics, right? So if I fly over Japan and I can only take 50 pictures per satellite or something, if I can go and take 500, the equivalent of 500 images because I've scanned a large area and showed you all the large oil tankers or something. That creates a lot of value for your customers. And even if it is we're downloading an Excel sheet, again, it's a ton of value.
Yep.
So it's like, how much money can you make over a place that people care about, not how many pictures you take over, I don't know, a forest.
Makes sense. So basically, yeah. So as you mentioned, you're dealing with the customers. You're not dealing with the end user directly, right? So, and that makes sense. So, how much of an advantage would that be, let's say, for a company that also does internally processing of the data when it comes to the price point? I mean, would they be getting a larger portion, right? Logically speaking.
So we do data processing ourselves in the cloud, and we deliver the data to the customer process.
Okay.
But I think that if we were to have vertically integrate, so it goes back to it. If we vertically integrated and did the analytic ourselves, then
that was my question. Yes.
Yeah, then we're competing with our customer, and if you compete with your customer, you cannot be successful.
Okay.
At scale. Right now, we have a fairly immature market, but as things grow, which they are growing rapidly, you will not survive. So if you're competing with 500 AI companies as a single company that also has massive capex in satellites, those companies will kill you, because your overhead is such that like you need multiple companies in one. You need to have a engineering company building something very difficult. Then you need to have an analytics team where you're competing with Google, Oracle, Microsoft, all these companies, which all have...
Just that by itself is just almost impossible task, right?
Well, and they all have products that use satellite imagery. So you're competing with them not only on like the output, but on engineers. And guess what? Oracle can spend a lot more money on engineers than some startup. And you have to have a customer service and quality assurance organization. So I'd much rather do a really good job building great hardware and delivering the output of that hardware to customers, and let them improve the market and find great niches and make money.
Yeah, that obviously everything makes sense. So people listening to this, make sure to take notes.
I don't know. I mean, we're like one of the only companies that does it. So
yeah, that's great. That's great. Again, talking about this, really standing out from the crowd, and just being a different company offering different type of approaches, and that's awesome. So talking about the satellite imagery, right, and the Earth observation technology just having the potential to revolutionize many industries. So beyond just government and security. So what do you believe are some of the most exciting and surprising ways that Umbra Space's data can be used in the future?
So what is probably exciting to your listeners is probably not what excites me. What excites me is the boring stuff.
Okay.
So if you go back to first principles, the very, very granular level of the value of radar data is, it's not a picture. We sell a measurement, a perfect measurement. It is the measurement between our side. So we send a impulse from space on down to Earth. We bounce it off the Earth, flying 20,000 miles an hour. We take that measurement, and then we're able to produce what looks like a picture to the human eyes, because we have optical sensors in our face, right? But a sophisticated user says, oh, that's a measurement. And if you can take perfect measurements, and sometimes you can do what's called interferometry, which is laying one image over another, you can see millimeter scale changes. I mean, I've seen human footsteps in grass. It is incredible. So if you can lower the cost to below the equivalent of like $200 an hour. So what you have is a guy with a truck who drives to the bridge and looks through a theodolite and measures that bridge. You're probably spending a couple $1,000s on his time, and then he's got to write a report, and maybe you're talking about a couple grand. If you can give those same measurements and you can provide the same quality of data from space for like a couple $100, you've now revolutionized an entire massive industry. I mean, they were expecting to the drone industry disrupted human surveying and that sort of thing by like $100 billion. Imagine being able to do that globally, which means you're a mom and pop, you're the best surveyor in Austin, Texas. And you have the best reporter, whatever, the best AI that surveys a bridge. Being able to scale that product globally allows our users to make unlimited amounts of money. And making your customers money is the only way that you can be successful. So I'm excited about boring stuff. But I think that there's large implications for climate change and understanding the planet and making the Earth better, which is obvious. So being able to see anywhere on Earth with, fairly frequently is pretty useful. It's just got to be done at a lower price.
Yeah, that's amazing. And obviously that's one of the places where AI also could come in to really, again, intercross those, data that's analyzed from space with, other factors, right, across the board, with the economic factors, economic implications, and all of those things. There was one study, I believe, that I read like recently, was like from study a year ago or something like that, that's flooding somewhere in the US resulted in the price of French fries growing in Japan, right? So that's amazing. And how can you really track that? I mean, without the artificial intelligence, I mean, it's really tough, right? But imagine tracking that all across all the supply chains, and what are those important assets that are taking part, and what if that asset, that supplier were to fall off the chain, what would happen, and what if there's a delay? So that's just impossible for humans to just analyze like that without help of those technologies. So yeah, that would be
gotta be done.
Yeah.
And I think that, but the barrier to entry has to be lower. So the barrier to entry for AI is getting like very low. Like I can use ChatGPT for $20 a month.
Yep.
That's pretty. I did not think that would have been possible several years ago, but no one is going to train a data set for $50,000. You are a moron if you're doing that, which means that the providers have to start providing data for free. And we're doing that with a very large free data set. And the barrier to entry, where it's like, okay, let's say what's in our free data set doesn't help your bizarre use case. Email me. I'll give you the data. I want you to learn. I want you to understand. I want you to make better products. And I want you to be able to implement AI. So if a college student can make millions of dollars with my data, it means that they'll grow a company to make hundreds of millions and hopefully sell for billions. Like that is what our objective is to grow the market.
Yeah, that's I mean, really awesome. Yeah, I mean, the type of impact that can have, or just generally on technology and the standard of life, it's quality of life, it's just amazing, right? So and solving those crucial crises, generally with the climate and everything, and also in space. I mean, we have the breather, right? So AI can also be applied there for traffic management and some very fascinating things AI can do. And I'm personally very excited towards that as well, and seeing how that will turn out.
Yeah, I mean, we're working with another company they're called, I think, Box Mika, which has been taking our open data and doing ground. I don't know what the civilian word is, but they're watching objects move in the imagery. So radar imagery isn't a picture; it is a collect of samples over a period of time. So you can unwrap that and you can see cars moving, or you can see a train moving. You can see all these things, like mini videos. And there's so much insight that you can detect from that, like the patterns of life, the activity. I'm very excited about what's coming. I think, but yeah, the prices have to come down.
Yeah, and I know for sure also that the governments are already using that, but yeah, as you're saying, for commercial use, it really has to come down. So what governments are doing, they're tracking a lot of things with the, movements and regarding everything, like, unusual behaviors, especially in, government like zones, that are kind of restricted, and they even track if a person basically walks by like during the same day like several times, and that's then it flags that as a unusual behavior and as a potential threat. That's I mean, that's some really advanced stuff that's really can blow your mind as an individual, and it sure blew mine, right?
Becomes less advanced every day.
Yes, because more new things are being added, right?
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so the next question, Gabe. So you work mainly with the governments, but do you also have commercial clients?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I think that there's like the people talk about us. It's so funny watching how we're interpreted on the internet. So
Okay.
yes, we have like, we don't, so like I didn't know that we had the DARPA contract was public, but like, so we're very careful about what we say.
Mhm.
So if you are on whatever one Twitter stream, you're like, Umbra is a totally commercial company and they don't work with the government.
Mhm.
And then if you're on a different, like whatever defense Twitter stream, you're like, Umbra has the coolest technology that the government loves. The reality is that we have satellites that take a lot of pictures.
Mhm.
So because we take a lot of pictures, we've lowered the barrier to entry, which means we're able to serve both government and commercial customers. So we obviously have a very special relationship with the United States government. But we work with allied foreign governments, like Five Eyes, governments that we like and trust, and we treat them like regular commercial customers. And I think that at the end of the day, no one is going to survive, or it's like you're not going to be able to make as much money if you're only focused on one thing, if it isn't the best product for the least amount of money. Like that's the product, and then the customers can be diverse.
Mhm.
And so yeah, we work with both.
Sounds good. So I'm sure you might get quite a few, individuals reaching out
Great.
from this episode. So the next question, Gabe, is obviously I know again you secured some great contracts lately, and so what is next that you can openly speak about? So what is next for Umbra Space?
I mean, I don't know. So when we did the deal with Maxar, there was still publicly traded. I'm not sure if they still are. But yeah. So
Maxar has been acquired lately, yeah.
yes, they're required. I'm not certain if the deal is closed or not. But what I'll say like about Maxar as a partner.
Mhm.
Walter Scott is the CTO of Maxar. Dude's just, he's so smart. So
Mhm.
like when we were in, well, I don't know. Okay, I'll tell a story about Walter, and I'm
Okay.
sure I'll get an email from Maxar. But it's a good thing. It's positive. So when we first started, we were in stealth, so no one knew what we were doing. The patent was not public. We were able to keep the patent withheld for a year, as part of US regulations. And we ran into Walter, and my co-founder was like, "Oh, this is what we're doing, and we're using this much bandwidth." And he's like, "Huh, I bet you're doing this." And he knew exactly what we're doing.
Hmm.
So like, I think that when a lot of kids grow up, they're like, "Oh, I want to be a firefighter or
Yep.
something, I don't know, doctor,
Astronaut, yeah. Yeah.
astronaut."
Yeah.
But when I was growing up, I just wanted to do a massive deal with a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that data. But yeah, they're a great partner, and they're really wonderful. I'm very excited about that relationship. Obviously, our relationship with the government is very strong. We love them. But I think at the end of the day, we really want to support that end user. So the end user may not know that the answer comes from satellite imagery,
Mhm.
but I think that the more kind of that middle layer who start adopting satellite imagery, I think that middle layer starts getting really big. So all the analytics providers are like, "Oh yeah, we buy drone stuff and airplane and satellite." If you start leaning into, a company that has great unit economics, providing you data for, much less money, I think they can see probably a very large outsized return. So I'm very, very bullish on that layer.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's interesting. So he knew exactly what you're doing, right?
Yeah,
You know,
smart. But I mean, so I've been doing this for 8 years. He's been doing this since the 90s,
yeah, yeah,
early 90s.
yeah.
Knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Maxar. I mean, it's a huge company, and they have huge track record, and now they recently unleashing the Legion constellation, their satellites, which they mapping the world in 3D, and they also targeting again the mainly military applications, but also enterprise. So
Tons of enterprises, and then they also have. I mean, you can see it in they release data on the internet, which is like their picture next to an Umbra picture. So we do co-collects. It's incredible.
mm,
Well, using two phenomenologies, this kind of multi-int is really, really cool. They also purchased a company called Aurora Insights, which has very, very good radio frequencies mapping capability. So if you fuse all those products together, you have a really interesting multi-int product, which is very exciting for the end user. And hopefully that gets wider proliferation.
Yeah, I mean, fusing has great applications. I never before heard actually of fusing from two different, again, Earth observation providers to fuse their own data, from space. But obviously I heard many cases where the drone data is being fused again with the satellite data. So, but that's interesting. I mean, two satellite data providers fusing their data together. That should be something, right?
Well, they do. I mean, yeah, we don't do it. We don't have that capability. I mean, Maxar has a gigantic team like that can take all this data and put it together and offer a really incredible insight.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so I think we covered majority again of the most important topics. So would you have any Gabe, would you have any final thoughts on today's episode, that you would really like to point out?
No, I'm good.
So we covered it all. That means we covered it all.
You covered it all. I do appreciate your time and thank you for
No, absolutely, Gabe. I mean, it's a pleasure having you. So you're always welcome back once again. Some new projects are released from.
We have a lot of announcements this quarter and next quarter. I think if you get feedback from your listeners, I'm happy to come back and focus on things that interest them. But I mean, it really does boil down to just really great unit economics and generating free cash flow.
Yep.
Leave with anything.
Yes.
Make more money.
Yes. And that's a great approach. And I really personally, again, like a lot the way, again, you were explaining Umbra Spaces, decisions. And, we went kind of from the very beginning to so the forex, and choosing, again, the right decision. So that's very, very interesting and provides a good insight, for listeners, whoever's, either a direct, a customer for yourself, or, if there's some individual that wants to also, go on a similar path, not exactly, again, in the, data service, but just generally in the space industry and in any industry out there. I mean, we often emphasize that space business is just a business, right? So you have to just balance, again, the customer needs and the unit economics, as you call it, right? So very important. Yeah. Okay, Gabe. So thank you again for joining us here today, and for everybody, thanks again for tuning in for today's episode. And you can follow again Gabe's and Umbra Space's story on umbra.space. Make sure to also subscribe to them on LinkedIn or any other social media platform. They're quite active there as well, and some great announcements coming, as Gabe mentioned. So looking forward to that.
And I'm on Twitter, and I will follow you. I will always respond. It's my last name. It's my handle is my last name, Dominocielo.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so make sure to find Gabe on Twitter as well. So
okay, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Gabe. Thanks for joining.